After his breakout hit The Terminator in 1984, James Cameron became a hot property, and when Fox tapped him up to do their Alien sequel, it was a match made in heaven. It was released to rave reviews in 1986, with many people considering it one of their favourite films ever made. Its theme of a race with superior firepower being overwhelmed by a race with less drew parallels to the Vietnam War, and it resonated with audiences worldwide. It also brought to the front the themes of family, with both Ripley and Hicks ending up being surrogate parents to young Newt, left behind after her parents were hosts for the Xenomorph Menace in events which can be seen in the special edition version. Aliens is constantly in my top 5 lists for action, sci-fi and 80s movies, and it still thrills and entertains 36 years later. With its top-notch special effects by Stan Winston Studios, thrilling set pieces, a great story, James Horner's rousing score, and terrific performances from the cast, which includes newcomer at the time Carrie Henn, the film is still excellent even to this day, and is well worth a watch, no matter what version you see, either the theatrical edition or even the special edition. You're guaranteed a wild ride. Fox were eager for a sequel. They approached Brandywine Productions with various screenplays from writers such as cyberpunk writer William Gibson, which would later be the basis for the comic book series Alien 3, the unproduced screenplay, which would have seen Ripley put into a coma, leaving Hicks to be the main character. Directors like Rennie Harlin, who had directed Die Hard 2 in 1990, would be considered, and the director even had ideas for a story of his own, including visiting the homeworld of the Xenomorph and having them invade Earth, which would have been pretty cool. Even David Toy, who would go on to write and direct the Vin Diesel movie Pitch Black, would be asked to write a prospective screenplay which was set on a prison planet. But it wouldn't be until writer Vincent Ward came on board with his own screenplay, which set the action on a floating wooden planet inhabited by monks, that caught the attention of David Giler and Walter Hill. The story would have seen Ripley crash land on the planet, and believing they're being punished by God, the monks imprison her in a dungeon. Eventually, she would have to sacrifice herself to kill the alien. However, disagreements between the producers and Ward over certain elements led to him being fired. But many of the basic plot points would be reworked into the finished article by Walter Hill and David Giler in a story written by themselves, which also incorporated said prison elements from David Toy's own story, and the movie would eventually have a new director in David Fincher, a relative newcomer who made his name directing music videos. Now, the behind-the-scenes story of the making of the film are something of a story all in itself, from the producers and executives constantly coming to the set and interfering, to filming without even a finished script, and to even director of photography Jordan Cronenweth's diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, which meant he had to be replaced with Alex Thompson, to name a few incidents. All of which led to Fincher disowning the film and never speaking about it again. However, on the flip side, you do have a fantastic cast who, along with Sigourney Weaver herself, you have the cream of British talent with the likes of Charles Dance, Brian Glover from Kes, TV's Porridge, and who starred as Richie and Eddie's next-door neighbour Mr. Rottweiler in Bottom, Paul McGann from the classic Whitnell and I, Pete Postlethwaite from Brassed Off, Ralph Brown, who starred in Wayne's World 2 and also in Whitnell and I, and some great American talent in the form of Charles S. Dutton, who had some of the best lines, Holt McGinley, and also an appearance from Lance Henriksen as well. It also had some impressive set design, and even some damn good effects for the time as well, with limited CG. The alien itself was a combination of a rod puppet and Tom Woodruff in a specially designed suit so he could move about on all fours, which makes the way it moves in the final film nothing short of great, with its speed being so fast it's a blink and miss it kind of affair, which actually makes it much more scary as you never see it for more than a few seconds, apart from the scene in the infirmary, which is now quite a famous shot. Eventually, the film was delivered by the 22nd of May 1992, and in the United States, with an eventual worldwide gross of $175 million, it made it the highest grossing Alien film at the time. However, many people hated it, including Michael Biehn, whose character was killed off in the beginning and his likeness used on the computer screen without his say-so. Over the years, though, many people have warmed to it after watching the assembly cut, which was released on DVD in a 2-disc set along with the theatrical version. These same 2 discs were also packaged in a set with the other theatrical versions of the other films and their own director's cuts, as well as which have also been released on Blu-ray. But I have to admit, I do love both versions as they're both so different to each other, with the assembly cut featuring over 30 minutes of additional scenes, including the alien bursting from an ox instead of a dog, and new dialogue recording, which wasn't done for its initial release. The dirt and grittiness of the setting and the new characters add something new to the film. Plus the fact that Ripley's fate is always intertwined with the fate of the alien, like it has been since the beginning of the series, and that makes it quite interesting. It feels like it's a predator that's always stalking her and always teasing her, and that she can never fully rest until it's totally annihilated, even if it means a huge sacrifice. Plus, Elliot Goldenthal's score is something amazing as well, and it really helps to drive the action along, and it's really subtle in the quiet moments of the movie. Plus the track, You Can Still Have a Life, at the end of the film before the credits, is done in such a way as to emphasise this is Ripley's finale. Her story is done. She's triumphant, but at a great cost. It's a great bombastic track from a moody score, and is definitely worth a listen to. Of course, no 80s or 90s action blockbuster is really complete without a video game adaptation, and Alien 3 is no exception. And of course, all the versions that I'm going to look at in this video all take creative license with the film. In fact, there are 3 different versions of the game across 8 systems, which ranged from the Sega Game Gear to the Mega Drive, Nintendo Entertainment System and the Amiga. And even the aging Commodore 64 saw a disc-based release as well, which according to various sources only sold roughly 100 or so copies, which makes it an exceedingly rare title. So let's burst forth and sink our teeth into that one, shall we? Yes, I know the pun was exceedingly bad. I'm so sorry. I am working with very, very limited material here. Now, with this being the only release for the aging micros, I never actually expected it to be any good. I can honestly say that my expectations were face-hugged into oblivion. It's a cracking port, and showed that there was still some life left in the old computers if they were put into the right hands. The graphics are really good for a late Commodore 64 title, and the control system gets around the need to aim up and fire by letting you do it while running. Standing still lets you jump, as you should. The only difference is the level layout is totally different to the other versions, with some exits being in the air ducts, which I expect was done to ramp up the tension. In actual fact, I found the level layout much easier to navigate than the other ports, but more on that later. Even the music is very good, as are the sound effects, with every note and pulse rifle blast squeezed from the humble and aging SID chip. Plus, being only released on disc helped, as the loading was quite straightforward, whereas if it was released on tape, there would have had to be witchcraft done to make it fit, and sometimes multi-load back in the day was a right pain in the backside, so on this I can imagine it probably would have been a lot worse. Saying that, it could also have been put on cartridge, and it would have worked just as well. But all in all, I would say it's a fantastic version of the game, and it's a fitting swan song for the C64. If you can find a copy, that is. The only downside is that it's a bit too hard, but it's still a terrific blaster. Both versions of the Sega Master System and Sega Game Gear are near enough identical, with just a couple of minor differences. On the Get Ready screen of the Game Gear version, the Xeno draws quite quickly, which is a pretty cool effect, whereas on the Master System it doesn't draw at all. There is also a short intro of Ripley blasting an alien, which looks like it uses an unused asset of the alien from the Amiga version, but this is present in both the Master System and the Game Gear versions. Sounds and graphics are exactly the same, and they are pretty damn good, with even a bit of detail on the aliens themselves, plus the animation is pretty good too, and more fluid than I thought that it would be. The music is also pretty good as well, as is the title screen music, which also has the Alien 3 title appear bit by bit just like in the film, and it is still a good effect. It even has the same glitch on level 2 with one of the aliens above the surface. Control system is pretty good too, given the two buttons with down and jump being used to switch weapons. It's actually quite intuitive. On the downside, as with all the versions as we'll see, it is a bit on the tough side, with very tight time limits to the levels, which are quite easy to get lost in for first time players. The Mega Drive version is exactly the same as its 8-bit siblings, but with 16-bit graphics and superior sound. It plays exactly the same as those versions, but it takes advantage of the Mega Drive's 3-button control pad, with weapon switches, firing and jumping all assigned their own buttons, and it controls really well. With its 16-bit lick of paint, it looks and sounds fantastic, but more on that in a bit. It even has the light coming from the facehugger egg from the film's trailer before the title screen, and it is a very, very nice touch. Now the game, like every other version, is hard. In fact, it's very, very hard. The time limits are quite tight. Again, just like the other versions, and more often than not, you can find yourself getting lost in the labyrinthine levels. So, again, like the other versions, making maps over lots of playthroughs is a must. Now, as I mentioned before, it looks and sounds fantastic. The animation of both Ripley and the Xenomorphs are spot on. and are really fluid, especially when Ripley's climbing ladders and firing her weapons, and even her running animation is actually pretty damn awesome as well. The music is top notch too, and the sound effects are great, especially when you're firing either the flamethrower with its nice whoosh sound or the pulse rifle. Although it would have been cool to have the actual pulse rifle sound from Aliens, this is a nice alternate. The other thing is that you also have the alien growling between levels as it drools, which is actually pretty awesome in itself. Now, at the time of writing, it was quite a cheap game to get, with the cheapest I've seen being a tenner, and I think that was cartridge only on eBay. If it is that cheap and you haven't played it yet, I'd suggest picking a copy up. It is a fantastic version of a great game. A radically different version coded by bits. You view the action from a top-down perspective, with the gameplay being more puzzle-based. The levels are again maze-like in design, but instead of you starting off with weapons, you have to find them as you go along, as well as keycards, health packs and other items. To pick them up, you have to press select to go to your inventory, and then select the item you want to get. The same goes for when you want to use a weapon or an item. Now, the game loosely follows the movie's plot at the beginning, and when the characters speak, you're treated to some nicely detailed cutscenes with nicely drawn graphics of Brian Glover, Charles S. Dutton, and Weaver herself. It even has a really nice intro sequence that sets up the game nicely, and it also has a rather cracking title screen, with a nicely detailed xenomorph and the Alien 3 title sliding down from the top of the screen, over the top of it. The game itself is, in my opinion, the hardest of all the Alien 3 games, and again you'll find yourself getting lost in the levels quite quickly. The first weapon you'll pick up is a pipe, which is about as good as facing off against an army with a pea shooter once the aliens turn up. The facehuggers themselves are dispatched by a few blows, but having said that, they'll drain away a good chunk of your health before you've even killed them. The same goes for the warriors themselves, while the eggs are instant death and are indestructible with the pipe. While the game looks nice and has some nice animation and some pretty good music, it's too tough to be any fun. Many a time I found myself wandering around the levels looking for the right keycards for the right doors, and I got hopelessly lost in the process. But if you want an Alien 3 game that's a bit different to the run and gunners on the other systems, then by all means, give it a look. You might like it more than I did. This version plays pretty much the same as its Sega counterpart, with you rescuing prisoners and blasting aliens into the middle of next week. Now, the time limits on this one, they seem to be even tighter than on the Sega games, and the maze-like levels are even more fiendish, especially with its own version of the slopes, which see you going down like a pinball all the way to the bottom. The graphics are radically different and are in keeping with the graphics of many NES games, with the colours being an abundance of green, orange, red and lots of different blues. Plus, when you fail, you're treated to knowing where the unfound prisoners are and treated to their deaths by a chestburster, which, for a Nintendo game in the very early 90s, they are considerably gory. Even though it's literally blink and you'll miss it, there is a little bit of gore there. The controls are actually pretty damn good, with you being able to switch weapons with a press of the select button. Although with that being said, you can't really jump that far, with you nearly always missing the platform you want, which means you'll be constantly losing energy by falling quite a long way, and it can be frustrating. Music and sound are actually pretty damn good, with some nice tunes and sound effects, and it means it's not really a bad version. But like the others, again, with what seem like tight time limits, it just makes it just as hard as the rest, if not a little bit harder. All in all though, it isn't a bad game if you can get past the level design, and it's another version where frequent playthroughs would help so you can make some maps. In fact, I would say that every single version would benefit from making maps. But you know what? I can't actually believe I'm going to say this, but LGN have actually made a pretty good game. I'm actually quite shocked. Very shocked indeed. Another version that's radically different. The Super Nintendo version sees you undertake various tasks, such as sealing doors and mending pipes, as well as the obligatory saving of prisoners, while free roaming around the maps with you visiting terminals to select your next mission. Throughout the game, you'll come across lots of fully grown xenomorphs and facehuggers, and you'll always be constantly under attack. Plus, the eggs close back up after hatching and rehatch with more facehuggers. However, just as in the Sega version, you're armed with a flamethrower, pulse rifle, and grenades to help you on your mission, with more ammo and health packs being found along the way. Now, with this version, the audio really makes the most of the SNES's audio chip, and the music is actually taken from Aliens and sounds absolutely awesome. It's a fantastic rendition. And the sound effects and the in-game music really do sound great. Along with the excellent flamethrower sound effect, it actually sounds really, really meaty. And even the graphics look like they're really pushing the system. And that intro sequence at the beginning is nothing short of awesome. It really does put you in the mood. Gameplay-wise, it's nigh on faultless. With you running and blasting Xenos like they're going out of fashion, it is fun to play, especially with the different missions, and it all adds to the variety of the game. Although, as I say, it is nigh on flawless, there are a few little niggles. The constant onslaught of enemies means you'll always be on the lookout for ammo, and you only get one life, meaning once you're out of energy, it's game over. Though I do have to admit, the game over screen is pretty damn awesome, as you'll see if you do find a copy. It comes very highly recommended. Go grab a copy and blast that alien scum back to where it came from. So then, here we go with the final version of the video, and it takes its cue from the Mega Drive version. However, there are many differences, among which are that you can only have either sound effects or music at any one time, and there's no parallax scrolling of the backgrounds. Plus, when you find hidden areas, when you go through the black part of the graphics, Ripley's visible. The time limits and the level layouts, and also the placement of the pickups, is exactly the same. That being said, the controls are adapted to suit a joystick, or if you have a 2-button joystick, or even if you use the Mega Drive control pad on the Amiga, there is an option to use 2 buttons, which would be one for fire and one for jump, and this comes in extremely handy, and it's better than using the 1-button joystick option. It's actually a very, very good idea, and it makes the game a much better experience overall. Differences aside, however, it is near enough exactly the same in looks. I just wonder, with a bit more time, could it have looked one for one like the Mega Drive version? I mean, with the recent Amiga games that are coming out, like in Via, you know, and the graphical quality of that one, could Alien 3 have looked near enough the same as the Mega Drive version? I mean, we'll never know, but we know that the Amiga is more than capable. Still, the game is still fun, and it is still very playable. And so there you have it, 8 different Alien 3 games on 8 different systems. Many play exactly the same, while a couple take things in a very different direction. But one thing's definitely for sure, they'll all provide you with a challenge, no matter what version you play. Do you have a favourite? Which one do you like the best? Which one do you not even care for? Let me know in the comments below. Let's get a discussion going. This has been a User 1 Retro special. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.